Case 1, Rachel Cooke. Her case is one of those that haunts the community of Georgetown, Texas, even after more than 2 decades. Rachel was only 19 years old when she disappeared on January 10, 2002, and it's still hard to believe that someone could just vanish like that, especially in broad daylight in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Rachel had been a cross-country runner at Mesa Junior College in San Diego, California, and was known for her athleticism and dedication to fitness. That day, she went out for a run like she did every morning, wearing a gray running outfit and New Balance shoes. Her parents had gone to work, and Rachel had plans to meet up with her dad later that day to go shopping. It was a normal morning, nothing out of the ordinary. But by 3 p.m., when her father returned home, Rachel wasn't there. Her car was still in the driveway, her purse and phone inside the house, but there was no sign of her. At first, her family thought maybe she had gone to work. She was known to work shifts at a restaurant called Wildfire when she was in town. They called the restaurant, only to be given the wrong information by someone who mistook her for another employee named Rachel. The relief was short-lived as it became clear something was terribly wrong. The search for Rachel started the next day, and it quickly became apparent that her disappearance wasn't voluntary. 6 witnesses reported seeing Rachel during her run that morning, all confirming that she had been jogging along her usual route. A couple even saw her near the end of her run, just 200 yards from her parents' home, between 11 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. But somewhere in that last stretch, she vanished. Initially, investigators focused on people close to Rachel, her father, her boyfriend, and even an ex-boyfriend with whom she had a turbulent relationship. Her father, Robert Cooke, agreed to take a polygraph, which he passed except for one question. "Do you know where your daughter is?" He later explained that he believed Rachel was dead and in heaven, which may have affected his response. He was eventually ruled out as a suspect. Rachel's boyfriend, who was still in San Diego, also became a person of interest. However, investigators were able to verify that he had been in California when Rachel disappeared, and he was cleared of any involvement. Then there was the ex-boyfriend. He had shown up drunk at Rachel's parents' house the previous month, pounding on the door at 3 a.m., professing his love for her. This incident, along with another encounter at a party just 2 days before her disappearance, raised red flags. But again, there was no hard evidence linking him to Rachel's disappearance. As the investigation unfolded, several people reported seeing a white Chevrolet Camaro circling the neighborhood around the time Rachel went missing. Witnesses even claimed to have seen Rachel near the car, and at one point they spotted what appeared to be a struggle in the back seat. The lead seemed promising, but when the police tracked down the car, it turned out to belong to 2 teenagers who had skipped school that day. They were cleared after being questioned. For years, the case grew cold with no solid leads. That was until August 2006, when a man named Michael Keith Moore confessed to killing Rachel. Moore was already serving time for murdering a pregnant woman and claimed that he had abducted Rachel while she was jogging, sexually assaulted her, and killed her with a hammer. He said he had dumped her body in the Matagorda Bay. At first, his confession seemed credible. He had driven a white truck, which matched witness reports of a suspicious vehicle in the area. Investigators felt they had finally solved the case. But then Moore recanted his confession, admitting that he had made up the story to get preferential treatment in prison. The charges against him were dropped, and Rachel's case was once again left without resolution. Over the years, Rachel's family has continued to search for answers. Her father, Robert, became a tireless advocate for missing persons, founding the Texas Missing Persons Foundation and organizing searches for his daughter. Tragically, Robert passed away in 2014 without ever knowing what happened to Rachel. To this day, Rachel Cooke's case remains unsolved. It's been over 20 years, and the Georgetown community still feels the weight of her disappearance. Every year, they hold a vigil, hoping that someday someone will come forward with the truth. Case 2. Melissa Flores. Melissa Flores' case is one that feels like it could have been solved several times, but it keeps slipping through the cracks. Melissa was born on December 21, 1979, and by the time she was 26, she had 3 children and a tumultuous relationship with her off-and-on boyfriend, Ronnie Dean Denny Jr. He was the father of her youngest child, but their relationship was anything but stable. Ronnie wasn't just a bad boyfriend, he was also heavily involved in the drug trade and had a reputation for being violent. In July 2006, Melissa took out an order of protection against him after he threatened to shoot her in the face. And you'd think that would have been the end of their relationship, right? But a week later, they were back together, with Melissa asking the court to dismiss the protection order. It's one of those heartbreaking situations where the cycle of abuse just pulls people back in. By January 2007, things were even more complicated. Melissa had found out that Ronnie was seeing another woman, Shannon Long, a childhood friend of his. Instead of turning against each other, though, Melissa and Shannon actually teamed up. They both realized they were being played by Ronnie and decided to hang out together to make him jealous and teach him a lesson. On the night of January 26, 2007, Melissa and Shannon went to a party where they met two men. All the while, Ronnie was blowing up their phones, furious. Around 5 a.m., they returned to Shannon's house and Melissa left, saying she was going to pick up her kids. 4 people saw her drive away, so it seemed like just another late night out. But something happened after that because Melissa never made it to her sister-in-law's house to get her kids. She called her around 8 a.m., saying she had fallen asleep at Ronnie's house and would be there around 11 a.m. But 11 a.m. came and went, and Melissa never showed up. Worried, her family went to Ronnie's house to check on her. They found her car in his driveway, with her purse and phone still inside. But there was no sign of Melissa. Days turned into weeks and then months with no answers. Ronnie was arrested on drug and weapons charges just 6 days after Melissa went missing. But those charges didn't lead to any breakthroughs in her disappearance. It wasn't until years later that a man named Jason Canterbury came forward, claiming that Ronnie had confessed to killing Melissa. Jason said that Ronnie had broken down one night while they were driving, saying, "I did it. I killed her. I killed Melissa." According to Jason, Ronnie had shot Melissa twice with a 9mm rifle during an argument. Another man, Russell Davis, claimed to have helped Ronnie dispose of the body, burying it on an abandoned farm. Despite these confessions, investigators were never able to recover Melissa's body or the murder weapon. Ronnie denied everything, and while police found 2 bullet holes in his former rental home, they couldn't definitively link them to Melissa's death. In 2014, more than 7 years after Melissa disappeared, Ronnie was arrested and charged with her murder. By then, he had started a new life in Texas and was married. Despite all the circumstantial evidence against him, the fact that Melissa's body has never been found leaves her case technically unsolved. Case 3. Joseph Sky Burnley. Joseph Schuyler Burnley, Sky as everyone called him, was someone who had a lot of promise, but life just didn't go the way he or his family had hoped. Born on October 18, 1985, Sky was a high school baseball star, the kind of guy people thought had a bright future. But like so many, he struggled with addiction, especially pills. After being caught with Xanax at the Neshoba County Fair, he ended up with a felony charge that sent him to Walnut Grove Correctional Facility in Mississippi. Walnut Grove was notorious. There were even reports of inmate abuse and corruption. It wasn't a place where you'd find much hope, and it certainly didn't do Sky any favors. While he was there, Sky was forced to join a gang, the Simon City Royals, just to survive. This would have a lasting impact on his life. By 2016, though, it seemed like Sky was trying to turn things around. He was reading the Bible, going to church, and had even gotten saved with his girlfriend at Hickory Ridge Baptist Church. On the surface, it looked like he was heading in the right direction. But on June 2, 2016, something changed. Sky left his grandmother's house where he lived and left his Bible open to Joshua 1:9, a verse about courage and faith. He also left a note for his girlfriend Sydney expressing his love for her and asking her to help people take the right path in life. It felt like a final message. That night, he stayed with his friends Travis Brewer and Amanda Morris. The next day, June 3rd, they set out to look for Travis's stolen truck. They tracked Travis's phone to a wooded area near Brandon, Mississippi. When they got there, Sky and Travis split up to search while Amanda stayed with her young daughter by the truck. But when Travis came back, Skye was gone. Travis claimed that the heat was too much for them to keep searching, so they left without him. He told police they tried calling out for Skye but got no response. This struck investigators as odd. While it was hot, it wasn't unbearably so, and leaving a friend behind like that seemed suspicious. The following day, Skye was officially reported missing. Travis told the police that they'd found his stolen truck, but that his phone was still missing. A few days later, though, that phone turned up near Travis's house, nowhere near where they had been searching. As the investigation unfolded, Travis's story began to unravel. He failed a polygraph test, and investigators began to suspect that Skye had been murdered. They believe Skye's past involvement with the Simon City Royals gang might have played a role, possibly in connection with drug activity. To this day, Skye's body has never been found, and his case remains unsolved. Investigators now treat it as a probable homicide, with Travis Brewer as the prime suspect. Case 4. Andi Wagner. Andi Wagner's case is another one that leaves you with more questions than answers. Born on June 9, 1998, Andi was described as a loving, kind-hearted person, someone who would go out of her way to help others. But by her early 20s, she had fallen into a rough crowd and developed a drug addiction. In 2022, Andi was living with her grandparents in Evansville, Indiana, but she wasn't home much. She spent most of her time with friends, moving between different places in Evansville and surrounding areas. Her mom, Elaine Garcia, saw how much Andi was struggling and invited her to come live with her in Texas for a fresh start. Andi agreed, and they made plans for her to move there in August. 2 weeks before the move, on August 6, 2022, Andi came home to her grandparents' house, packed a bag, and left without saying where she was going. It wasn't unusual for her to go off for a few days, but this time felt different. Later that day, her family received a text from her, and she was spotted in Oakland City, about 40 minutes away from Evansville. That was the last time anyone saw her. By August 12th, her family reported her missing. They told investigators that Andi always stayed in touch, even when she wasn't home, so her silence was deeply concerning. The investigation quickly centered around 11 people who might have known where Andi went, but none of the leads panned out. One of those people was her ex-boyfriend, but again, nothing conclusive came from that. In October 2023, Elaine moved back to Evansville to continue the search for her daughter. At one point, she even found some clothes in the basement of an abandoned house that she believed belonged to Andi, but it didn't lead to any breakthroughs. There were multiple theories. Maybe someone had hurt Andi because she was planning to leave for Texas. Maybe she had overdosed, and someone had hidden her body. There was even the possibility that she had been forced into sex trafficking. In May 2024, the FBI received a tip that led them to search 3 locations, one of which was a property in Gibson County, Indiana. They seized bags of evidence, but once again, nothing definitive came from it. Tragically, Elaine passed away on December 18, 2023, never knowing what happened to her daughter. It's been almost 2 years since Andi vanished, and as of June 2024, she remains missing. Case 5. Deborah Hunter. Finally, we have Deborah Hunter, whose case is just as heartbreaking. Deborah was a native of Boone County, West Virginia, and by 2012, she had found herself in a violent relationship. That year, she and her partner traveled to Florida, where he sexually assaulted her. Deborah reported the assault to the police, and he was arrested. But after his release, he tracked her down. Deborah had been staying at the Sojourner Women's Shelter in Charleston, West Virginia, trying to rebuild her life. On July 2, 2012, she was last seen with her abusive partner, and then, nothing. She vanished. A witness claimed to have seen her in Madison, West Virginia, about 30 miles south of Charleston, but no other leads materialized. What makes Deborah's case even more tragic is that it wasn't entered into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NamUs, until 4 years later, in 2016. It's like her case just fell through the cracks. The man Deborah had been involved with became the prime suspect, and another woman he dated after Deborah's disappearance told police that he had confessed to killing a previous girlfriend. But when investigators tried to follow up, the woman refused to cooperate. To this day, authorities have not released the name of the man Deborah was last seen with, and her case remains unsolved. If she were alive today, Deborah would be 56 years old. But as of June 2024, no one knows what really happened to her. Each of these cases is a stark reminder of the devastating impact of unresolved disappearances. Behind every missing person is a family, a community, left with unanswered questions and a heartbreaking lack of closure.